Fragile ceasefire in Gaza is holding for now, despite challenges. This morning, Israel said one of 4 bodies handed over by Hamas yesterday is not a hostage. Israel has threatened to restrict aid supplies into Gaza over the slow return of the bodies. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Deborah Patta has more from Jerusalem.
Hamas is slowly releasing the bodies of hostages still in Gaza, a total of 7 so far, which has angered families waiting for their loved ones. We spoke to hostage negotiator Gershom Baskin, who told us, sadly, some bodies may never be recovered. He said many of the Hamas commanders who buried the Israeli hostages were killed by Israel. And there are also thousands of Gazans who are unaccounted for beneath the rubble of buildings bombed by the Israeli military. The Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics says more than 11,000 people are still missing in Gaza. First responders are searching for the dead, but it is not easy when over 90% of the buildings have been damaged or destroyed. And there are only the most rudimentary tools available. As Gaza starts to think of rebuilding, the U.S. peace deal calls for an interim governing body headed by President Trump to run the territory. That ultimately will hand control over to Palestinian rule. But that body has not been established yet, and Hamas has stepped into the vacuum, allegedly targeting Palestinians accused of collaborating with Israel. Baskin said there are gangs empowered by Israel who were involved in illegal activities before the war, who have been empowered as an alternative to Hamas. President Trump said, and I quote, "That didn't bother me too much, to be honest with you." The Palestinian Authority has condemned the Hamas executions as extrajudicial killings, calling them heinous crimes, and called for the restoration of law in Gaza and a return to legitimate Palestinian rule. Deborah Patta, CBS News, East Jerusalem.
Meanwhile, Israelis have been gathering for the funeral procession of deceased hostage Guy Ilus, whose body was returned by Hamas on Monday. In a CBS News exclusive, our Tony Dakoupil joined Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as he visited some of the freed Israeli hostages in the hospital, and then the two discussed several issues. Here's Tony.
Good morning. We met the Prime Minister just outside of Tel Aviv at Rabin Medical Center shortly after sundown, and we watched as he and the First Lady, Sarah, visited with newly released hostages and their now intact families. But we also looked ahead beyond the current ceasefire and beyond even Israel's border to Palestinians' future.
Who is going to govern Gaza? The only names mentioned are Donald Trump and Tony Blair. Is Tony Blair going to be the president of Gaza?
I doubt it, but I think that this is a transitional period, and we want to fashion, a governance that works, that is not made of people who are committed to our destruction. Because if we put them there, then we'll just repeat it again and again and again. And we don't want to have the October 7th massacre repeated.
How do you de-radicalize the population in Gaza that wants to fight? You've got thousands of young men who have just spent 2 years enduring brutal war or fighting in this brutal war, and on the back of that, generations of struggle.
I think that you have to understand that Gaza is not uniform. There are Gazans who are fighting Hamas and who are saying, we don't want this anymore. And a lot of people in Gaza now know that Hamas has brought catastrophic consequences to them because of its fanaticism. The most important thing in destroying fanaticism is to destroy a certain hope. The hope that the fanaticism will achieve its results. When people know Israel is here to stay, you're not going to destroy the Jewish state.
One thing we didn't touch on is the latest apparent disruption in Palestinian aid, because that particular bit of news broke after our conversation. But we touched on a lot, including the politics of the recent speech by President Trump at the Israeli parliament and the ribbing he gave Prime Minister Netanyahu, or appeared to anyway, about him not being easy to work with. He hopes that President Trump would say that, the Prime Minister said, because when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people, he intends to be tough. Back to you.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. I want to bring in Tal Heinrich. She's an Israeli journalist and the former spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Tal, it's so good to see you. So you were working for Prime Minister Netanyahu when the previous ceasefire agreement that was negotiated under President Biden, what was different this time around?
Thank you for having me on, Vlad. Very good to see you as well. You see, we also had a ceasefire in place before October 7th, 2023. What's different now is that Israelis will no longer accept a fake sense of calm and quiet. We're not naive about it. Not anymore. Our security is not something that we take for granted. And I can tell you what Israelis want to see next happening in Gaza. We want to see Hamas disarming, relinquishing power. We want to see the Trump plan, the Trump deal in its entirety, the full 20 points being carried out thoroughly. And we have trust in our leadership and your leadership, President Trump, that they will see it through. Because without that, and without the first clause, by the way, that was mentioned in this interview, the first point in the plan is the de-radicalization of the Palestinian society in Gaza. Without that, Vlad, I can guarantee that you and I are just going to have this conversation once again, maybe a few years down the road, a few months down the road, because Palestinian children, as long as they learn that they have no hope in life since there is a Jewish state, and that they should aspire to kill Jews and kidnap another baby Kfir Bibas, well, we have no hope. Something has to change, and there is a big opportunity right now.
So, Tal, I want to play a little bit more of that interview with Tony and the Prime Minister about what a future in Gaza could look like. Let's take a listen.
Take me into the future. Paint me a picture of when this is over. What will it take for you to say it's done and we've won? Well,
I think that for the foreseeable future, not only for Israel, but for the free world and for the civilized world, you have to maintain your ability to defend yourself, because freedom is not permanent, nor is it automatic. If you cannot defend free societies, they will be overtaken by authoritarian or totalitarian regimes. There's no other way.
So, Tal, also in that interview, Tony asked the Prime Minister about a possible two-state solution, and I'm sure you've seen the portion of that interview where the PM explains that ultimately Israelis would like to see some level of sovereignty for the Palestinian territories, but not one that would threaten the existence of the State of Israel. So who do you see, for example, as a viable option? The Palestinian Authority is known in recent years to have grown corrupt, but during the 2 years since the horrific attack on October 7th, they were able to maintain some level of control and discipline in the West Bank. I know that they're seen by some Palestinians as illegitimate, but isn't it better than following Hamas, which has led to the destruction of so many lives over the course of these 2 years?
Vlad, to answer your question, let me just bring up that just last week, the IDF, the Israeli military, thwarted a shipment from Iran in the so-called West Bank with rockets, with anti-tank missiles, with weapons. There are terror elements there who are already trying to plan the next October 7th massacre. The reason why they're not able or weren't able to do so is because Israel has some overriding security access over there to make sure that they can't rearm and regroup the same way Hamas did in Gaza. So October 7th didn't happen because the Palestinians didn't have a state. It's because they did have a state. In fact, they sort of have two states, failing ones, terror ones. We can't allow that. What the Prime Minister has said, this notion that the Palestinians down the road should have all of the powers to govern themselves, but none of the powers that could threaten Israel, it's something that he said before October 7th. And I'm pretty certain that most Israelis stand behind it, more so after October 7th. So it's a transitional period with this deal that we have in place right now. We see it as a huge opportunity. And during it, we want to see the involvement of moderate Arab states where their own societies went under certain processes of de-radicalization, gradually taking over as per the Trump plan. And we'll see, we'll take it from there. There are elements in Gaza, and I'm sure you've seen these horrific videos. There are Palestinians who are trying to resist Hamas rule, but if you've seen these mass public executions that Hamas are now just shooting in the streets, Palestinians who resist them in those areas where they go back to and try to reestablish their rule. That's of course, not what we want to see. We want to see a different Gaza. We want to see a Palestinian society that can exist alongside Israel and not instead of a Jewish state.
And we have seen those videos, and we've actually showed them on CBS News, and they are absolutely horrific. And to your point, these are people who seemingly seem to be, they are hopeful and in some cases attempting to get rid of Hamas themselves. They've seen what's happened over the last 2 years, but they're caught in the middle. For those people, those families in Gaza who have no choice, and I say that only because when you see videos like that, where you see masked men in the streets with, Kalashnikovs putting bullets in the back of the heads of people who are seemingly resisting their terroristic rule, what is your message to those folks who are caught in the middle and say, we don't want this, but we also don't want to be attacked by the Israelis either?
That pretty soon they're going to have a big opportunity with a commitment from Israel, from the United States, from various Muslim Arab states who are also involved in this plan, as you saw just over the last 2 days when President Trump was in the Middle East. They're going to have a big opportunity. Just hang in there. And Hamas will be no more. This is what we promised ourselves, and we also promised it to them. We need to have a better future in the region, and we know that there are committed people on the other side that are also dedicated to this idea.
Tal Heinrich, it's always great to talk with you. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vlad.